Hello, everybody. This is Jacob Sapochnik with the Enchanting Lawyer Podcast. This is a show where we interview the most inspiring entrepreneurs, legal professionals, and business people around the world who share their ideas with us and inspire us to do better. And today I have a great attorney and an innovator in the legal field, David Latt, the founder and managing editor of Above the Law, which is considered probably the most influential publication in the legal world today. His writings appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and many, many other prominent publications. Prior to his media career, David worked as a federal prosecutor in New Jersey and did a clerkship with a prominent judge for the Ninth Circuit. He also worked with Wachtell Lipton, arguably the nation's top big law firm, and is a graduate of Harvard College and Yale Law School. Recently, he published his first novel, Supreme Ambitions, that has garnered many, many positive reviews, and I'm very honored and excited to have David on the show. David, how are you?
Very well. Thanks for having me, Jacob.
Of course. And I know you're in New York, and hopefully the weather is not too bad today and Friday.
Yeah, it's not terrible. It's warmed up since the last few days, so it's good.
Excellent. And so, we have many attorneys who listen to the show, but not just attorneys. And for those people that are not familiar with your work, in a nutshell, what I'm curious about is how did you get to tell us a bit about the story of you from attorney to a blogger and all that in a nutshell. And we'll get to it during the show, but I want to hear it from you.
So I graduated law school. I clerked for a judge. I worked at a law firm. And then I worked as a federal prosecutor for then U.S. Attorney, now New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, possible presidential candidate. And while I was working as a prosecutor, just as a hobby, I started a blog called Underneath Their Robes. And it was an irreverent, cheeky blog about federal judges that I did under a pseudonym because, of course, as a lawyer appearing before these judges, it wasn't really something I could do under my own name. And that blog developed a following, and eventually I revealed myself as the formerly pseudonymous author of it. And then shortly thereafter, I went into blogging and writing full-time. So I've now been writing and blogging for longer than I practiced law. So I think I've passed the halfway mark on that.
Right. And you mentioned that you revealed yourself. Was it something that you've done on your own, or somebody actually exposed you?
It was something I did voluntarily. I gave an interview to Jeffrey Toobin of the New Yorker magazine, and told him who I was. It was voluntary and yet involuntary in the sense that some people had figured out who I was already. Basically, I'll spare you all the details, but it had to do with some of my ignorance about how IP addresses worked. So some people had figured out who I was, and so I figured I would rather go out with a bang in the pages of the New Yorker as opposed to be outed by somebody else.
Absolutely, and that was a great thing that you did back then. And was that the foundation for your thinking about starting Above the Law?
Yes, I think you could say that. After I left the U.S. Attorney's Office, I worked for a time at a political blog called Wonkette, which is still around, and I was interested in how Wonkette covered the political world in a way that was very insider-focused and looking at backstory and personality, and it was lively and it was humorous. And I kind of thought to myself, why is there not a website like Wonkette, like Gawker, for instance, for the legal profession? And that's what led me to start Above the Law back in the summer of 2006.
Right. And, 2006 is an interesting time for legal blogs. And the reason I also started my first legal blog, the Visa Lawyer blog, in 2006. And I feel that back then, it in a way, it was a bit easier to kind of penetrate through the noise of blogging. And
yes.
I don't know if, what you've done with Above the Law is obviously beyond normal. I mean, this is just, it's one of those powerful blogs that everybody's reading, and it's been evolving every year. But I'm curious to learn, to get from you, as what do you think were some of the key to success of this of Above the Law to make it what it is today?
Well, I think one of the things that has helped above the law in terms of its early days was the legal profession is actually surprisingly small. Even though there are, depending on how you count, a million, 1.3 million lawyers in America, people know other people. And so early on, we'd be writing about individual lawyers, and word of mouth would spread because people would say, oh, hey, did you see so-and-so, my friend, my colleague who was on this website? And we did some things in the early days that were controversial that I don't know that we would necessarily do today. Like we had beauty contests for, the hottest law librarian. I don't know that we would do that today, but things like that can help you get on the map. As you noted, 2006, there were many fewer blogs. It was easier to get an audience. It's a lot harder now, partly because there's such a wealth of content out there. But at the same time, if you're smart about it, there's still a lot of opportunities, as you've certainly discovered.
Right, absolutely. And of course, there are different forms of content today that we didn't have before. And video is definitely much easier to release today.
Yes.
So it's definitely helpful. And so great success with this. But I don't know if you've been asked this question, but I'm curious to know always about the failures and some of those failures and some of this wisdoms that you get from those.
Like what? Like what do you mean specifically?
So, for example, you tried, when you were launching the blog or trying to build a transition from a lawyer to a writer, things that didn't work as well, and you've done them differently, and you learn from those.
Yeah, there have been a couple, I would say, over the years. One of the good things about working for a website rather than a print publication is it's very easy to simply kill things that aren't working. It's not like a newspaper or a magazine where you have to redesign the whole thing. If something isn't working, you can just say it's not working. So one thing that we tried, for instance, a couple of years ago that didn't really quite take off was we tried to establish a page where people could just kind of write their own articles. It was a community page, but it ended up just being overrun by people who were mainly just trying to sell something. I think one thing we learned from that is readers actually like a bit of guidance. I'm a big believer in user-generated content, and we have a very lively community of commenters. But at the same time, they kind of want somebody to set the agenda, to say, okay, let's talk about this. Their lawyers are busy, and so you can't always rely upon them to start all the conversations. You kind of have to give them a helping hand.
Right, so you want to be kind of like a little fire starter, get something.
Yeah.
People start, commenting, and the comments there are definitely juicy.
Yes.
Which I like.
Yes, exactly.
Which is another, I think, reason why people keep coming back to this. Like, well, who's going to be the next crazy guy who's going to write something there, right?
Exactly. There's something of that too, yes.
So a lot of the questions that I get and people keep asking is, we consume everything online right now. We communicate online, and we use social media to build relationships and engage in the legal field. And I know that you are invited as a speaker across the country in legal conferences. You talk about social media as one of your topics. What do you think is the importance of social media, the use of social media for attorneys as we get into 2015?
Well, I think social media is just an invaluable tool because as we were discussing earlier, with the proliferation of content, it is hard to make your voice stand out among others. But with social media, you can do that. And the way you have to do that is by engaging other users. It's social media, after all. It's not just about broadcasting your stuff. It's about interacting with other people. And I think it can be a very good tool for attorneys in terms of raising their profile, in terms of keeping up with what's going on in their world or in their practice area, in terms of cultivating potential clients or sources of referrals. So I'm a big booster and big fan of social media.
And what do you think are some of the platforms that you definitely say, well, if somebody is trying to get into this thing and they can't do everything, what will be some of those platforms that you say they definitely should be on them right now?
Well, I think that probably the big three, I would say, for lawyers are really Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Those are certainly the ones that I use the most, especially Twitter and Facebook. For people who are publishing content, like people like us, these channels are great ways of distributing that content to other people.
Right, and I agree with you 100%. I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen lawyers do is they use this as a publishing platform as opposed to a communication tool.
Yeah.
And building relationships in 2015 for attorneys online is going to be break it or make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what are some of the ways you think people can stand out trying to make connections with people online in 2015.
Well, I think one thing is it's what you put into it in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. Sometimes you may be doing it for a while and not see an immediate return. So sometimes people get impatient and they say, well, I haven't gotten a client or a case or anything immediate out of this. Why should I keep doing this? But sometimes you need to plug away. As I've learned from building websites over the years, it takes a while to build an audience. It's not like, unless you're some celebrity, it's not like you're going to have thousands of readers from day one. So you really have to have a lot of patience.
And lawyers, they want everything quick.
Yes.
That's why
Exactly.
the guys who call you and we get a lot of calls from SEO expert and we'll get you to the first page of Google in 3 hours. Just give us the money, right? That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
But it's not working like that. It's
Exactly.
it's a lot of work and consistency, and that's exactly
Yes.
what you've been doing.
Yep.
But at the same time, and I was talking to a few legal bloggers recently, and they hear the same thing, and a lot of attorneys are saying, well, blogs are kind of dying. What's the point of even doing it? And I'm curious to hear from you as somebody in that space, some effective marketing communication. What are your thoughts about the fact that people saying that blogs are kind of going away, and how can we actually make a difference blogging in 2015 as opposed to before?
So I can see where people are coming from with the thesis, but I don't think blogs are dying. I would say that they are evolving. I think that it's a little bit different in the sense that so we've been around at Above the Law since 2006. In the early days, you would have a lot of people who would come directly to your blog multiple times a day sometimes to read the news. Now, because there is so much content and because you have social media, people are not necessarily as loyal to individual websites. They kind of roam around a lot. They'll kind of wait and see, what will my friend post on Facebook? What will my friend post on Twitter? And then they will follow that link. So people may not necessarily be as addicted to individual blogs as they used to be. They are discovering new blogs. In some ways, this can be very good for bloggers because if you're starting a website that's fairly new, you can be discovered. But a lot of it happens through social media. So that ties back into what you and I were discussing earlier, just about the importance of social. In this day and age where people aren't just going to come to your blog multiple times a day, you have to go out and interact with the people and bring them back to your blog.
Right, absolutely. And it looks like to me, and from what I hear from you, is even today, if you're just starting a blog, you're trying to make your blog more visible, you have to have something different, and I don't know, controversial if I would say that, but something kind of that people say, you know what, have you heard of this guy or you heard of this thing? And that's exactly what you did, even 2006, right?
Yes. Basically, I would say, I totally agree with you. You have to give some people something unique and something that has value to them, something that they can't necessarily get elsewhere on the web. Because say you want to express an opinion on President Obama. Well, there's no shortage of opinion on President Obama. What is it about your opinion that's different? Or what kind of information do you have that is unique? So, for example, at Above the Law, we've been able to get a lot of traction out of covering law firm bonus announcements in great micro detail because nobody is covering that world as closely as we are. So people come to us because they say, you know what? There are other people who cover it in general, but these people cover it really blow by blow by blow. So you have to kind of figure out, what is my value add? What am I giving to the reader that is different and unique?
Right. And because you do it so well, if somebody else wants to try to do it, it's kind of discouraging. Say, well, Above the Law, they're already doing it. Everybody's reading it. We're not going to compete with them in that area, and so you kind of make yourself that's your niche.
You would find a new niche, and there are so many niches out there that aren't fully explored yet.
Right. So you've been blogging, and Above the Law is rising, And then you write this. I want to talk about why did you decide to write Supreme Ambitions, which is
Yep.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
In a nutshell, the story of a young Ninth Circuit clerk who wants to clerk on the Supreme Court, and her powerful boss, a Ninth Circuit judge who wants to sit on the Supreme Court, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. And I think there are a couple of reasons I wanted to write the book. One is that I've always enjoyed reading novels, and so I thought it might be fun to try and write one myself. A second reason is that I had been doing Above the Law and blogging for years and years, and I kind of thought I want to try something different. I want to mix it up a little bit. And then I think the third reason, which you and I were talking about before the interview started, was just I had my first blog Underneath Their Robes, which was really a very personal, fun, judge-focused blog. And then Above the Law is a much bigger, broader thing with many, many different writers. In writing Supreme Ambitions, I felt I was going back a little bit to the very personal world of Underneath Their Robes.
Right, and when we talked offline before, I did mention that it's very clear from the book that we're getting back the old David, the one
Yeah,
that was
you go.
obsessed with the world of the elite, and
Yeah,
he had
yeah.
the path to the top and this little things. That the reason why people were reading this in the beginning over and over again. So that's great. And how did that make you feel as you wrote this book and say, I'm kind of back in the trenches again?
It was a lot of fun. It was like a trip down memory lane, as they say. And I even integrate into the plot. I don't want to include any spoilers, but
Right.
there is a blog in the novel that is a little bit like Underneath Their Robes.
Oh.
There are. It was like going back to my roots in a way.
Right. And so now that you are you release this novel, what do you think is going to be the next step? Is it something that you want to do on a regular basis? You want to write more? What do you think is the value, aside from your personal satisfaction of getting this out to the public?
Yeah, I think that partly a lot of it is just the interaction I've been having with readers, people who've enjoyed it
Yes.
and who have reached out to me on Twitter, on Facebook, by email to say that they've really enjoyed it and that it resonated for them. So that's been very gratifying to just hear the feedback of people. I also think it's been good just in terms of helping to raise my profile and helping people learn more about what I've been doing at Above the Law and what my colleagues and I have been up to. So I think on the whole, the book has been very good at just raising the profile of above the Law and me as well. So it's been. I think that it's to be honest, it's very hard to really hit it big with a book. Into Supreme Ambitions, it's been doing well. It's gotten good reviews. It's been selling well. But books are they're a tough. I've learned it's a tough medium because unlike blogs or other things, you're actually asking somebody to pay money for something, which is not often the case with websites. And so, getting people to read you when you're free is relatively easy. Getting people to pay even $9 for the ebook or 20 something dollars for the hardcover is much more challenging. So it's been interesting to me to figure out how can I help get the word out, partly
Right.
through interviews like this one. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I know quite a few attorneys who are thinking about writing for years. And the reason is because, we have a lot of stories. I mean, you had stories from your days as a clerk. I mean, there are many attorneys, criminal lawyers, in my case, immigration lawyers. We have so many stories, but actually taking the commitment to do this, going through the whole thing of getting it published, I think it's very, very admirable. And hopefully it gives some inspiration to other attorneys to follow your lead.
Yep.
And because for an attorney who publishes a book, this is a great tool. Whether you sell many or not, it's a great way to create credibility, which is very interesting because people respect attorneys, despite all the bad reputation we get. We are still very respected in the community, in most
Yes.
places. And having a
No,
book,
absolutely. Yep.
right? And having a book, and I can share with you a little quick story. I know you are from a Filipino background, and I have quite a few Filipino clients, and this is one of those, Filipino clients. They call me attorney. They will never call me Mr. Sapochnik or whatever.
Yes.
And it's the respect for the profession that some places, some countries, they just even today, whether it's justifiable or not, it's just very nice to feel that you get that like a doctor or
Yes.
attorney, and it's very humbling, and so I think that we should definitely preserve the reputation of the profession as much as we can.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. That is unusual, but in the
Right.
Philippines, they would address you as Attorney Sapochnik rather than Mister. That's
Right.
right. Exactly.
So I'm always happy to get that kind of respect, and hopefully I always try to earn it.
Absolutely. Yup.
You know, in my case, one of the things that I remember, and by the way, before we, and I want to recommend the book to everybody. I think this is great. I'm going through it right now, and it's just very captivating. David, if somebody wants to, what are the best places to get this book? Where can we get it?
Yep. So it's available through Amazon. It's available at
Okay.
Barnes& and Noble, both online and in stores. You can order it directly from my publisher, the ABA.
Perfect.
And it's also available at independent bookstores like Politics and Prose in D.C. or Powell's in Oregon. So there are a lot of ways that people can get their hands on Supreme Ambitions.
Perfect. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a few links in the show notes so people can go directly to the book if they want to buy it directly.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
That will give you a little push. And, for me, one of the interesting things that I was reading on Above the Law, and I'm still fascinated with that, is your exposure of law schools and the way they advertise getting students and some of these lawsuits, the students couldn't find work. And I wanted to get your take on this. Today, 2015, what do you think is the role of law school when they try to get students to enroll and when they graduate? What should be their responsibility?
So my view of legal education, it's not quite as negative as some of my co-writers on Above the Law, but I still believe that law school is a professional school. People are there to learn how to practice law. I don't believe that people are there just to learn more about the legal system in some kind of theoretical way, which is what some defenders of legal education say. You're paying a lot of money, you're putting in 3 or more years of your life. You want to be able to get a job as a practicing lawyer at the end of it. So I do think that law school is very much oriented towards the profession, and people should be learning, not that you're going to be ready to practice immediately afterwards, but that you should be learning at least the skills and the approaches to thinking and writing that will help you find professional success. I think that one thing that we've been able to do well at Above the Law is just inform people that being a lawyer is not an automatic ticket to riches. There are a lot of people who graduate law school with a lot of debt who can't find jobs. And so I think law school can be a very good decision for many people. But what we've been saying is you need to do your research, you need to be informed, and you need to know what are the chances that you're going to be able to find a job after taking on all this debt and spending all this time.
Right, and I think it's different for everybody. So people
Yes.
shouldn't be just saying, well, everybody else is doing it, I want to do it, and then when I graduated, I couldn't find a work.
Yes, everyone is different. It depends on why do you want to go to law school, what kind of opportunities do you have afterwards. Maybe your family has a law firm so that you have a guaranteed job afterwards working for your dad. Well, that's very different from somebody who has no connections to the legal field whatsoever. Maybe you have debt from undergrad. Maybe you don't. Maybe somebody is going to pay for your law school. Maybe you have an IP background. There are all kinds of factors, and so the decision is very individual for everybody.
Right, absolutely. And my take is that, I still think that it's a great profession, even today, with the amount of attorneys that we have, with the difficulties that we can get trying to become attorneys. With the use of technology, social media, and what the future is holding for us, I think it will be a great profession for people to be able to share information in a free way, educating people, and of course, doing this, they can get more rewarded, whether financially or personally. So I do believe that there is a great future for the profession.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, David, as we come to the close to the end of the show, is what are some of the pieces of advice you want to share, whether it's for lawyers or anything about the legal profession as we start 2015?
Well, a couple of things, I think. One takeaway, I would say, and I think this is something that you and I were discussing prior to the show, is just be generous. It can help a lot to, even in a very self-interested way, to be generous with your time, to help other people, to spread the word, to give a little bit of free advice. People really appreciate that, and it often comes back to your benefit when somebody will retain you or speak well of you or refer a client to you. So I think that there is a lot of merit to the whole sort of paying it forward theory. Not that you can give it away entirely. You have to make a living, of course. But I think that if you build a big network and if you are active in the community, it can really, really help you a lot. And the second thing I guess I would say is don't be afraid to speak your mind. I think some lawyers can be very conservative and they're afraid of alienating anyone. But one thing that we've seen just at Above the Law and in terms of social media also is it's too easy to just stand for nothing, really. And you do want to put your voice out there and make yourself heard, especially when other people are doing that already. So that's, I guess, a second point that I would leave you with or leave people with.
And I think it's a great advice because, you know, if you're not going to say something different, there's no way you're going to be found or going to be heard or anybody's going to care about you. Especially
Exactly.
now, there's so much information out there. Why would we care about you, right?
Exactly. Yep.
This is great. Well, David, I wanted to thank you again personally for coming on the show. I want to wish you all the best for 2015 and for Above the Law, of course. And good luck
Yes.
with the book. I know it's going to do even better this year.
Great. Thank you so much, Attorney Sapochnik.
Thank you, David. And this is Jacob, enchantinglawyer.com. If you have any questions or any comments about this episode, please feel free to post them on our blog or email them to jacob@enchantinglawyer.com. Wishing you a great weekend.